Hello everybody, in today's video I want to show you how to use Vizcom to extract materials, apply them to your own products and your own designs, and also how to explore and work with colors inside Vizcom, create your own asset library that you can work with and use across all the different projects that you have inside the software. So if you're curious to learn more about Vizcom, let's go, jump in. Alright, so for this project I decided to take one of my old sketches where I did design like a wireless home entertainment design, speaker, wall mounted. So this is the box. I think it lends itself well because it has multiple materials, and then we can explore and see how we can apply different materials to the different sections of the speaker, right? So here I already went ahead, placed it into the Vizcom workspace and removed the background, and also just already looked at how would this potentially look rendered. Yeah, so the different materials really work well, I think, in this concept. So let's see what we can do with it inside Vizcom and how we can work with different materials all together. So I went on and basically took some photos of some interesting materials that are not as readily available in any render software, which is mostly fabrics, right? Or not as convincingly to be recreated in 3D. So this is like a fake leather texture. This is like a soft polyester blanket. Then I have this gift wrap, some quilted fabric, nothing too special here, some felt, this a carpet, then the cushion for like usually seen on backpacks and stuff, right? Another like fabric and textile, a paper shade of a lamp from IKEA, right? Then I took a 3D printed material that also has a 3-dimensional wave pattern on it. I took a picture of the bamboo printer's printing plate, and I think that was more or less it, right? So let's take this for an example. So we have our picture, and this is completely unedited, right? So I just took it this way, and then what you can do in order to extract a material is you just go plus extract and go to material, and now you can move the whole thing to a position that is best according to what you feel. You can also still zoom in, right? For more detail, you can actually zoom in quite a lot, which I think is interesting, because also the zoom factor that you apply will also be translated into the render when you use it later on. So here then you can give it a tag, like, I don't know, this was a carpet material, and then you can extract it. And what you will get, I think I did it already, where's the carpet? So this is the carpet extracted. So then you get like a cleaned up version of your original picture. I would say the lighting is a little bit more uniform. It also did change a little bit the appearance, I would say. So it does take into account the label that you apply when you extract the material, right? So then I think it made it a little bit more cleaner, more uniform, but all in all, it kept the overall theme intact. So I went ahead and did the same for my other materials, right? So here also the light's a little bit shitty and the perspective is a little bit messed up, right? It bends like a little bit. And then if I extract the material, then we get this much cleaner alternative, which can be used better, or will provide us with better results in the end, right? Than we have here. So this is what it made from the leather one. Even though my leather looks more like a actually plastic texture, but because of the description that I provided with it when I created this artificial leather, it also enhanced the leather feel by its own training data, right? So it is not just copying your image and makes it, let's say, a flat, clean version. It does apply AI image data to improve on it or to make it what it's supposed to be. Here also, I think this is a good example of how the image output is much better quality. Here we have like some depth of field, some blurry edges, some sharp ones, very bright. But what we get is this really nice and uniform thing, right? Backpack cushion. So that's what you can do. And then the PBR is basically, so what PBR does, so you can decide where it's supposed to put the results into the studio or drop it in the workbench directly. If you drop it in the workbench directly, then this is what you get. So let me just make sure that we don't get confused. So here I took basically this image, which was based on this photograph. This is the extracted material, right? So if you generate PBR, you get all the textures that you could use for inside rendering in Keyshot or wherever. So this is the original, then you have the albedo version of it, you get the normal map, you get the height map, depth map, you get the roughness map, and you get the metallic, if there is any, right? Because this is absolutely non-metallic. But now you can go ahead and download, right? Export if you want it in higher resolution. But also what you can do is add it to your asset library. And you can either decide to keep it within this file only, or add it to your global library, which is available throughout the different projects inside Vizcom. And if you cannot find your library, then you go to the top, right next to the cursor, and there you have your library. You can also probably, maybe it's on this file, and then you have the different libraries of this file. You can also go to my library, and there you can have all the images that were saved as materials. You can just drag and drop them in, and then they will appear here, right? So you can also save color palettes and colors all together. You can have it in different styles, workspace. So you see already the utility that this has if you have to be consistent across different products that have different workspaces, studios, and then it's time to see and if you can apply. So the first thing that I was trying to do to be efficient, right, is to take my base image, plug it in here and say, make rendering more photorealistic in the first place and change the material to image 2, which was the paper texture for the sides, and picture 3 for the front panel. So I was actually referring to the gray part of the sides and the white part of the speaker. Maybe the phrasing is not very precise, but I mean, you can explore and try things, right? So that's what I got. It did apply the paper to the sides and this to the front panel, but it removed the actual grill of the speaker. Here it did the exact opposite of what I was asking, but it's still interesting to see, right, how these materials work in this form factor for the different curvatures that the product provides. And here it actually did what I wanted. But as you can see, the orientation also of the paper texture is always horizontal. That is because my reference image has them horizontal. If you want to change that, you have to edit this texture first, spin it around here, go back, and then wait for it to basically update. And only then will it also adhere to that. You can also try to explain to it that it should turn it. That works, but less reliably than using the image in the orientation that you want to use actually. Right, so anyways, I felt like this is not working that well. So I tried it with even more different materials, right? Changed the gray material to 1, which was the 3D printed wave material. And make the black front panel similar to the material from number 3 with a subtle perforated texture. Change the white panel to the material in number 4, right? So I basically, it did do the wave pattern, even though the wave pattern was changed more radically than I expected. So this was the original photo that I gave, and this was the output. Wait, where's the output? Where's the output? Is it this one? This is the output, right? It's much more uniform, but actually I don't like the result as much as my original picture. Here the metallic feel of it is more alive, has more dynamic, and works stronger. But for this example, I used the uniformized example. That's what we got. We do see that it did apply the leather texture at the front, but it didn't change the white section at all. Same here, and it changed the background. And here it applied this part to the wrong and just a general fabric to the white one. So it mixed things up. So even though I think some of it looks cool, like the leather works well with the brassy kind of thing, and also this fabric works quite alright, I would say. The lesson is that it's better to iterate slowly through a thing rather than change everything at once, because the error rate is much higher that way, right? So what I did instead is take this image and just apply a single material. Render more realistically and change the gray fabric part. So you just point to a single material of the first image to match the material of the second image, but turn the seam direction 90 degrees. So this is what I was referring to before, right? So this was the prompt where I didn't tell it to turn the seam direction. Here it also changed the background, unfortunately, but it applied the material to the right section of it. Then I said, turn the theme by 90 degrees and it still didn't do it. Only for the last example it did, right? So that's why I say try to give it as an input already the correct orientation, so you don't have to waste iterations of creating the right direction for you, because it's not as reliable in that way. But this is basically the output that I expected, right? It works well. Also the material shading of the other materials based on the sketch is really strong. I love how it translated the white plastic. So this could be already finished if you want, but of course we want to try more, right? So I took this image and now I said, okay, now change the white plastic material of the first image to match the material of the second image. And that worked like in one go, right? It immediately understood the assignment. It even kept the curvature of everything intact. Then you can still take this one and go further with it. So here I said, make the black center plate match the brass metal. So I just basically wanted to align them without adding an additional material, but reducing the material differences actually. And we see it works quite well. Then again, I asked it to apply this material to the metal section. And afterwards I asked it to apply this one just to check it out, right? This is a pattern I took from Pinterest, not a photograph that I made myself. So that also works, right? You don't have to take the pictures all by yourself, but obviously that's cool because you can go in all the way in terms of detailing, and maybe you have something in your hand and the realism of it is much better, right, than of a picture taken from the internet. But that's basically what it did. Here the curves flow nicely according to my reference image, while the rest stays the way it was, right? So it also keeps the rest alive. I mean, color-wise, it's not working together well, but I haven't explained it which colors I want to use. Here is the combination with this one instead. I think really funny and interesting, but this obviously looks much better now. We are going too far with it. Like if there's several very tactile materials or very attentive or attention-seeking materials, they overload the whole image, which is happening on the left side, right? So what happened on the right side is we got everything reduced again because the side is very calm. It works well with the wood, also in terms of color and tone, right? The shade. And the wood is just a single material here, which is, let's say, made a little bit more exciting by the texture that is applied to it. But we have a clear focal point in the center with a straight plate with perforation. So I think this overall is a very successful application of the material. And here also sometimes it blends like in funny ways, right? So this is also what I wanted to show you with this one, the size difference, right? So here is the original size and this is the smaller size. So you do see that there's an immediate impact on also the sizing of the texture that is applied on the image. And also what's funny for this one, I had it enlarged, right? So I tried to make it a pattern like this. Let's confirm. And there I just basically copied one image and placed them next to each other, right? To create a bigger one with smaller size though. And then the transitions between those tiles are not as clean, right? I just made it like very fast. And it's like, okay, it will probably just ignore it. But what I notice is that somehow it feels like this is especially important. I should focus on it, make it the main aspect of the texture when I place it. And you get this line, for example. Also here, it kept it. So if you want to use an image based on a tile texture that you do yourself, take a little bit more time to make it work properly, because it will also translate all the inconsistencies. So here that was already better. That's where I cut it a little bit shorter. So the sharp line in the middle, at least, is not visible. And then still, because I mentioned in my brief, I think that it was supposed to engrave the logo. It did some funky stuff here. So all in all, I think this is the most successful, which is also why I went further with it. And now we get into the world of coloring, right? So what you can do, or maybe should we take another example? I think that's all right, because it's a nice one, right? So you can just go ahead and say variate, and then you get this field, which is default on the form tab, but you can just go to color, and it will try to detect the colors that are within the picture, right? So this is our color palette based on the image that we input. Natural wood tones, which makes a lot of sense, but we want to explore alternatives, right? So you can just go here, and Vizcom has a unique or default library that you can use, and you can also save colors specifically that maybe are brand specific or project specific, whatever, you can place them in here and save them to your asset library as well, right? But for us, the Vizcom one is sufficient, and then you can just click on the one that you feel is interesting. I don't know. I haven't tried. Which one haven't I tried yet? Pop art vibes, right? And then you can either remove or add even more. Let's add another one. But it must pop, so we make it really bright. Okay, but instead we want to remove this one and maybe this one. And now you can generate images, and it will try to implement this new color palette that you defined, right? So here are some examples where I used the soft pink with some of the colors removed. I think really interesting. It kept the wood, which is interesting, but I feel this one works better even. So just do several iterations to see also the different ways that it finds to implement the different color swatches. Right, then we have another color swatch, I think also really strong. But here also I think this is stronger than this guy, even though it works well with the background all together. Maybe if it would have been a little bit smaller in the corner of the speaker, maybe I think I could accept it, but this is a little bit too much for me. I prefer this guy or this one on top. And yeah, here these are the results based on the color palette that we just defined, right? The pop art vibes. And it does change also the design, but most dominantly it applied the Colombian flag to this design, which is cool though. The front, I mean, you can always still combine things, right? And also do color changes easy in Photoshop. This is an interesting effect that it proposes here. I think this could work as a speaker grill, the bigger one, right? Interesting. So that was that. Then I wanted to test a new feature, or relatively new, not exactly new, but which is extracting parts, right? So this consists of at least, let's say, 3 or 4 parts, depending on if this is a single part or if it's 2 different parts. What you can do is just extract, and then you go to parts. And now it will automatically try to identify different parts that are composing your design. And here it says there's a main frame, we have a front grille, and we have a side panel. So we have a main frame, which is apparently this guy. Then we have the front grille, and we have the side panel. You can add more, right? And you can also redo, because beforehand it did outer frame, fabric, side panel, front grille, wooden speaker. So it's also different per iteration. And then you can ask it to extract the parts. Then it will do so somewhere on your workbench. And this is one of the previous examples, right? So we do see that it's also interestingly faulty, because it made the side one like a complete solid. And it turned this one also much bigger than it actually is in the reference, right? And even put it like also made it completely solid with the pattern everywhere. It changed the perspective of this one, which is interesting, I think. Now you can really read it, see how it works. This really looks like an engravement. Cool, well done, even though the perforation is supposed to go through, but that's something you can iterate on further. There was a second try. I think it worked a little bit better, even though this is still way too thick. This is also not really right, and this is completely off. But then I felt like, okay, I can implement up to 4 images per, let's say, command. I have 4 parts here. What happens if I recombine them and ask it to build my speaker of these components again, right? And I think this is an interesting, creative, and funny exercise. Obviously, you will not get your exact speaker, but maybe you get some other interesting ideas. So here is, I tried with different compositions and different combinations, and I got these things where they took this as the base. They implemented all the parts in interesting ways. I like this one a lot, actually. This is maybe not the speaker anymore, but it looks cool. This is funny how the wood and the fabric merge together to be something completely strange. Here, I think this is well done, the sides, right? Also, this is the closest to my original design, actually. Well thought of, crazy. This, yeah, looks also quite interesting, right? Just maybe inspiring, or just giving you a new idea, new directions, how to arrange things together and recombine them. Right, so yeah, merging them things together to get your original is not really what you can expect. But if you want to create an exploded view, maybe it's better to take your original one and use a reference of an exploded object of similar build-up. And then I asked it to create an exploded view of the first design, referring to the second design or image for the internals of the exploded view with all components clearly separated. I also use this button quite a lot. So let's say, let's copy this one, duplicate, and then remove these. Let's say this is the sentence that I wrote, and then I ask help, and then it will propose a better way of phrasing what you potentially are trying to say, right? So instead of create an exploded view, refer to image 2, it says create an exploded view of 1 showing internal components and assembly. Refer to image 2 for detail and arrangement, right? So the language it uses is supposedly more clear for Vizcom's AI than my own language. And then if you make it, the output should also be of higher success rate, right? So that's what I did here. Because of my reference image, which is oblong shaped, right? Round rectangle. The internals are not really working with the shape that I had in mind. Also, the drivers, I think a single driver or smaller ones would be more suitable for this design that I had in mind. But at least it gives you an idea and can potentially, I think this one's interesting, right? It's not the typical exploded view. This one, maybe there's something you can fix still, right? Like the back here, the shape maybe not right, but overall it does seem like it makes sense in the first impression. I think this was even better. Only the order of things is a little bit strange and there are some fuck-ups. All right, and the last thing that I wanted to try for today was if I can change the grill pattern easily from this thing to something like this. So I took this from the internet and asked it to change the perforation to match this image, right? And that was the first try, semi-successful. Second try, much better. I think it's even interesting that it put this one readably on top. Then we have this in the center, also works for me. Here it's a weird combination of both. And here it just applied the pattern, disregarding the logo. So there's definitely something I can keep to work further with, right, or work on. And this was a failure. All right. I hope in this video you learned something new about how to work with Vizcom. You enjoyed it. And if you did, follow and like. See you around. Let's go. Bye-bye.